You know that feeling, right? We've all been there. You've got to write something kind of important, maybe a little awkward, and you're just staring at that blinking cursor on a blank page, totally stuck. It's such a common frustration. But what if you could get past that in just a few seconds?
Well, let's just see this in action. Imagine you type a simple request into a tool, something like, draft a polite email asking my landlord to fix the leaky faucet. And boom, instantly you have a perfectly good starting point. You're not starting from zero anymore, you're just editing. And that little shift from being stuck to getting things done, that's really what this new wave of AI is all about.
So, that's the journey we're going to take in this explainer. How artificial intelligence went from this big, sci-fi idea to a genuinely useful helper that can make your day just a little bit easier.
So how did we get here? How did we go from these abstract ideas about thinking machines to a practical assistant that's right there on your laptop? It's a really fascinating story, full of big questions, some clever experiments, and a couple of huge breakthroughs. Here's a quick look at the road we'll travel. We're going to start way back in the 50s and 60s when people were just starting to ask the big questions. Then we'll jump to the 80s and 90s, where AI got its first real wins. After that, we'll look at the 2000s until now, which was all about the data boom that changed everything. And finally, we'll land right where we are today, with your AI assistant. All right, let's start at the very beginning. The whole field of AI didn't just appear out of thin air. It was born because a few brilliant people started asking the right kind of questions.
Okay, so back in 1950, this genius mathematician, Alan Turing, he cut through all the philosophical noise about what it means for a machine to think. He came up with a really practical test. He basically said, look, let's stop worrying about what's going on inside the machine's head. Let's just look at how it behaves. If you're chatting with it and you can't tell if it's a machine or a person, well, that's something, isn't it?
And what's so great about Turing's idea is that it really empowers you. You don't need to be a computer scientist to figure out if an AI tool is any good. You just have to ask, is this useful? Is it helpful for what I'm trying to do? Your common sense, your judgment, that's still the most important part of the whole equation.
Then, a few years later, something else happened that was simple but really powerful. You know how when you're organizing apps on your phone, it's a total mess until you start putting them in folders with names? Well, that's kind of what a group of researchers did at Dartmouth in 1956. They gave this scattered field a name, artificial intelligence. And just by doing that, they gave it a home, making it so much easier for people to talk about it, get funding, and work together.
Then, in the mid-60s, this thing called Eliza came along. It was a really, really simple chatbot. Mostly, it just repeated what you said back to you in the form of a question. So if you said, I'm worried about my job, Eliza might say, why are you worried about your job? But the effect it had was incredible. This quote says it all. People actually felt like they were being understood, even by this simple little program.
But Eliza taught us a lesson that is, more important today than ever before. Just because an AI sounds smooth and can carry on a conversation, that doesn't mean it actually understands what you're saying, and it definitely doesn't mean it's accurate. Fluency can look a lot like intelligence, but they are not the same thing. So what's the takeaway? We always have to double-check. Okay, let's jump ahead to the next big era. This part of the story is all about following the rules, and a very famous chess match. After all those big ideas, AI started to prove it could actually do useful things in the real world, starting with tasks that had very clear rules.
So in the 1980s, you had what were called expert systems. You can think of these like a giant super smart checklist. They just followed a bunch of if-then rules. So if this happens, then do that. And they were fantastic for stable, defined tasks, like making sure a complicated computer order had all the right compatible parts. This is really different from modern AI, which learns from messy, fuzzy patterns in data, which is much better for things like recommending movies, where everyone's taste is different.
And this whole rule-based approach had its big celebrity moment in 1997. That's when IBM's supercomputer, Deep Blue, beat the world chess champion Garry Kasparov. Now, it didn't outthink him like a person, it just used raw, brute force power, analyzing a mind-boggling 200 million chess positions every single second.
And this is the perfect example of something called narrow AI. Deep Blue was an absolute genius at chess, but that's it. It couldn't order a pizza, it couldn't tell a joke, it couldn't even play checkers. Its victory showed that a machine could be brilliant at one very specific thing.
Okay, now let's fast forward a bit. How did we get from that giant chess-playing machine to the AI tools that so many of us use every single day? Well, this is where the data boom completely changed the game. All of a sudden, AI had the fuel it needed to learn from the real world, instead of just from a programmer's rulebook.
In the early 2000s, recommendation engines started popping up. The idea behind them is actually really simple. The system just noticed that, hey, people who liked book A also seem to like book B, so it would suggest book B to you. That simple concept is now what powers your Netflix queue, your Amazon suggestions, and your Spotify playlists. It helps us find things we might like without having to search through millions of options.
A little over a decade after Deep Blue, IBM was back in the spotlight, this time with a computer named Watson on the game show Jeopardy! Now, Watson's real skill wasn't true understanding. It was just incredibly good at breaking down the show's tricky, pun-filled questions and then finding the most likely answer in a massive database at lightning speed. But the very next year, 2012, was a huge moment. A new approach called deep learning caused this massive leap forward in accuracy. You can see it on this chart. The error rate for things like image recognition just plummeted. This breakthrough is what unlocked the AI we have today, things like sorting photos on your phone or dictating a text message.
And that huge improvement in accuracy was what made voice assistants possible. First, there was Google Voice Search, then Apple Siri came along, and then Amazon's Alexa. Suddenly, AI was in our homes. We could set a timer while our hands were messy from cooking or ask about the weather from across the room. It just made using technology feel a little more natural.
And that brings us right up to today, with the arrival of generative AI. This is the stuff that helped us with that tricky landlord email at the beginning. The big change here is that it doesn't just find information, it can actually create new things. It helps us get over that blank page problem, taking us from stuck to editing a pretty good first draft in just a matter of seconds. Okay, so after that whirlwind tour through history, what's the bottom line? How can you actually use these tools in a way that's helpful and safe? Let's boil it all down into a really simple, memorable playbook. Here it is, just 3 simple steps. First, use AI for the grunt work, getting a first draft of an email, summarizing a long article, or outlining a plan. It's a fantastic starting point. Second, you always bring your own brain to the party. You make the final call, you do the final edits, and you double-check anything that's important. And third, this is a big one. Keep your private information out of it. Just take out any personal names, account numbers, or confidential details before you hit enter.
If you only remember one thing from our conversation today, let it be this. It's the perfect way to think about it. Let the AI help you draft and organize, but you always use your judgment to decide. That balance gives you all the benefits without losing control.
You know, when you zoom out, the story of AI isn't about machines replacing us. It's about tools getting better, more helpful, and easier to use. The best way to get comfortable is to just start small with something simple. Stay in control by following that little playbook and just see what works for you. I really hope this helps you feel a bit more confident as you start to explore these tools. If you want to keep learning, you can find more at radosimpleai.com.